All right, so let's get into something really fascinating today. We're talking about a powerful concept, the containment strategy. How do you protect a truth when it feels like the whole world, all the power, is lined up against you? Let's break it down. So let's put ourselves in that position. Imagine you're trying to protect something true, something vital, but you're up against an overwhelming force. What do you do? Do you go for the immediate, righteous fight, even if you know you're going to lose? Or do you think bigger? Do you play the long game, a game designed to secure that truth for generations to come? That's the choice we're exploring. Well, the answer is this incredible, kind of counterintuitive strategy called containment over correction. And the idea is wild. It suggests that sometimes the smartest thing to do isn't to fix an injustice right away. Instead, you contain it. You limit the damage. Now, to really get what this means, we're going to look at two huge case studies from early Islamic history. We're talking about that critical time right after the Prophet's death, when everything was up for grabs. Okay, let's start with case study number 1, the land of Fadak. Now, if you've heard of this, you probably think of it as a famous inheritance dispute, right? But what if I told you that's exactly what you were supposed to think? What if framing it as inheritance was the whole strategy, the opening move in a really clever and pretty ruthless legal battle?
So, the key to understanding this whole thing comes down to one Arabic legal term, hibbah. A hibbah is basically a gift, but it's a specific kind of gift, one that's fully given and transferred while the person giving it is still alive. And here's the kicker. If something is a hibbah, it has nothing to do with inheritance law. It's already been given away. So the whole argument about inheritance, it's a total misdirection.
And this is where we see what's called procedural warfare in action. It's brilliant, really. Step 1, the land is given as that hibbah, that gift, and there's a written legal document to prove it. Step 2, the state comes in and whoops, the document is destroyed. It's gone. Step 3, with the proof of the gift erased, the case is suddenly and forcibly reframed as an inheritance dispute. And see what just happened? The original owner, who was just minding their own business with their property, is now forced to become a claimant. They have to prove it's theirs. The whole legal dynamic just got flipped on its head. So to make this new inheritance argument stick, the state's entire case hangs by a single thread. One solitary report that claims prophets don't leave any inheritance behind. But there's a major problem with that. The Qur'ān itself, the highest authority, says the opposite. It gives us a clear example. Solomon inheriting from his father, David. So you have the clear word of the Qur'an on one side, and this one lonely report on the other. And the comeback to this was not, hey, that's my land. It wasn't emotional at all. It was a cold, hard legal argument. A solitary report cannot repeal the book of Allah. You see the genius here? This isn't just about a piece of property anymore. It's about a fundamental principle. Can one unverified report just erase a verse from the holy book? They were defending the very integrity of the law itself. But this is where the story gets really interesting, and honestly, pretty shocking. Fast forward a few years, Imam Ali, who was at the center of this whole thing, finally becomes the leader. And everyone's thinking, great, first thing he's going to do is take Fadak back. But he doesn't. He just leaves it. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why on earth would he let this injustice stand? His decision right there, that's the absolute heart of the containment strategy. I mean, think it through. If a new ruler comes in and just says, nope, that was wrong, I'm changing it back by force, what precedent does that set? What's to stop the next guy from coming in and doing the exact same thing, and the one after that? You see, by fixing this one problem, he would have created a much, much bigger one. It would have legitimized the idea that the law isn't a stable foundation. Instead, it's just a weapon, a political tool that gets passed from one ruler to the next. Justice becomes whatever the person in power says it is. And that, right there, is containment over correction. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but by refusing to take back the land, Imam Ali contained the far greater danger. He sacrificed his own personal right to protect something much more important, the stability of the entire system. He was preventing a future where law and justice are totally meaningless. Okay, so we've seen how this works with a piece of land. Now let's take that same logic and apply it to something infinitely more important, the Holy Quran itself. Because the fight wasn't just about property. The real fight was for the very soul of the faith. Who gets to say what it all means? So here's the situation they were facing. After the Prophet passed away, The Qur'an was collected and compiled into a single book. But in that process, something crucial was lost. It wasn't put together in chronological order. The authoritative explanations, the tafsir, were separated from the text. And suddenly, you have a scripture that is, in a way, silent. The words are all there, but the context is gone. And a book without its context can be made to mean almost anything, which makes it the perfect tool for state power.
The solution to this was just absolutely brilliant. Instead of trying to change the physical book, which would have caused chaos, they introduced a new concept. They drew a line between two forms of the Qur'an. On one hand, you have the silent Qur'an. That's the book itself, the physical text we all have. But, they argued, a text is just ink on paper without an interpreter. And that's where the speaking Qur'an comes in. That's the Imam, the living, breathing guide, who holds the context, who understands the chronology, and who embodies the true meaning.
And Imam Ali summed up this whole idea in one profound sentence. The Qur'an does not speak. Men speak through it. Think about that. The book itself is a perfect but neutral tool. The real fight, the one that truly matters, is over who gets to pick it up and speak for it, who holds the authority to unlock what it really means.
So, what did this strategy actually accomplish? Two incredibly important things at the same time. First, it locked down the physical text. By agreeing on the book, it prevented anyone from coming along later and adding or removing verses for political reasons. It preserved the unity of the scripture for all Muslims. But second, and this is key, it moved the authority over the text's meaning away from the state and placed it with the living imam. The text was safe and its interpretation was protected. Its containment over correction on a whole new level. All right, so let's zoom out. What's the long-term result of this whole containment strategy? When you put these two stories together, the story of Fadak and the story of the Qur'an, you start to see a fundamental split emerge. It's a deep disagreement over the very nature of authority, and it's a split that has echoed down through Islamic history ever since. And that single strategic decision really sent things down three different roads. First, you have the path of the Ahl Abayt, the Prophet's family. Their model was anchored to that living guide, the Imam. It allowed their school of thought to survive and maintain continuity, even without a political empire. Then you had the state model, which anchored authority in the text, plus the scholarly methods approved by the government. This led to massive expansion, but also, over time, a lot of fragmentation. And finally, you get a third model that pops up now and then, a Qur'an-only approach, trying to rely on the text alone without any guide at all, which, as you can imagine, often just leads to chaos.
You know, if you wanted to boil down the whole Fadak incident into one sentence, this is it. Fadak was not taken because of inheritance law. Inheritance law was invented to justify taking Fadak. It just perfectly captures that procedural warfare we were talking about. The goal came first, and the legal justification was built around it afterwards. Classic. And that really brings us back to the biggest question of all, doesn't it? Because this whole strategy, cooked up more than 1,000 years ago, leaves us with a question that's just as relevant today as it was then. When you have a sacred text at the heart of a faith, who gets to speak for it? Is it the person with political power, the scholar with their books and methods, or is it a divinely designated living guide? How you answer that one question, well, it changes absolutely everything.